Today's episode, we have episode 4 and our final episode of our team-by-team fantasy football previews, where we go division by division to find each team's most relevant fantasy storylines. Today we have the AFC South and AFC West. We finally get to talk about, I don't know.
You should leave that in, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know, guys. It's been a long day. Before we get into that,
fourth wall break. This is super weird to do an intro. We're recording our second episode of the night. We've actually recorded one just previous to that. So like redoing intros again is tripping me up hardcore.
I was going to say Mahomes, and then I was going to say Russ, and then I was going to say CJ Stroud. And it was the fact that I picked 3 different guys in my head. I was like, the joke wasn't going to be funny. Today's episode of the Regression to the Mean podcast is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Best ball on Underdog Fantasy is the best and easiest way to play fantasy football. Just draft your team and that's it. No waivers, trades, or weekly start-sit decisions. Underdog will automatically play your best players at each position every week. Sign up today with promo code RTM to receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. You can sign up for as little as $10 to start drafting today. It is the best way to get prepped for redraft season. Kicking things off, starting in the AFC South. Aidan, I don't know why you gave me this squad, but here I am talking about the Houston Texans.
Yeah.
I had a
Take us away, brother.
I had a hot take on Twitter. I mean, on TikTok, where I said the Houston Texans had a better offense than the Carolina Panthers. That was when I thought that Bryce Young was going to be a Texan and that CJ Stroud was going to be a Panther. Here I am living with the take because, I kind of actually do think they might have a better offense. And when I'm looking at the Houston Texans, the major question that comes to mind with this team, and I'm a huge Dameon Pierce truther. I love the way that guy plays. I think he's going to be excellent in fantasy this season. I think his ADP is relatively sharp. I think he kind of defies that RB dead zone. I think he can kind of break through with that. I'm not worried about Devin Singletary as his competition for touches. What really intrigues me about the Houston Texans in 2023 is Nico Collins. And is Nico Collins going to emerge as a top 24 wideout in fantasy? So if you're having to Google who Nico Collins is, you're probably like most normal people. That is, he's put up strong underlying efficiency numbers since coming into the NFL 2 years ago. He's been playing in some of the worst offenses in all of football with some of the worst quarterback play, and his yards per route run has been pretty strong. He has good prototypical size. He has good hands. He's kind of like that slasher X player. Imagine like a T. Higgins type player without T. Higgins' juice and skill. And that's kind of what you got with Nico Collins. He's been an under-the-radar favorite of Reception Perception's Matt Harmon. Matt Harmon does an incredible job charting wide receivers. And Nico Collins has been really good at beating press man and man coverage since he's came into the NFL. This season, he has limited target competition with Robert Woods, Dalton Schultz, John Mechie, Tank Dell, and Noah Brown. That is a who's poo-poo platter where Dalton Schultz is probably the most... Robert Woods, Dalton Schultz, John Mechie, Tank Dell, Noah Brown. That's who he's competing with.
Poo-poo platter.
Poo-poo platter. I think that theoretically we're going to see a massive bump in both play calling efficiency and at quarterback play for Nico Collins. We have a Kyle Shanahan disciple and Bobby Slowick coming in to run this offense, and we have this jump from Davis Mills to CJ Stroud. I think with good QB play and a good offense, Nico Collins has an opportunity to see a 20+% target share, and he plays half of his game indoors. He is a dome bro, which intrigues me, as everyone knows.
Let's go.
I don't know how fast
to
this
make
offense...
dome bro shirts.
We need a dome
We
bro.
have to get dome bro merch.
I don't think this offense is going to be run particularly fast. I think it's going to be an established offense with a good defense, and they're going to try and play ball control. But I think he's clearly the alpha in this offense. And if CJ Stroud is just even good, like out of the gates, I don't see a world where Nico Collins, in his target earning ability and his efficiency historically with a good quarterback, won't be an incredibly positive pick at ADP, considering you're going to get him at, in the 14th, 13th round at 132 on Underdog. He's just kind of one of my sneaky plays that I think could be a top 24 wide receiver when all things are said and done this season. So I'm really intrigued to watch Nico Collins. I know that's kind of a niche fantasy bro topic to go with, but that's what I'll be looking at in 2023 with the Houston Texans. What do you guys think about Nico Collins?
I'm trying to temper my expectations a little bit. They brought in Robert Woods. They brought in Dalton Schultz. They brought in Tank Dell. It's like, do I think Nico Collins is the most talented one? Yes. But I don't know if they think the same thing we do. So I'm pretty high on him, but it's a bit of a murky pass catching room, as you kind of already touched on. So we'll see how it shakes out. I wouldn't overexpose yourself to Nico Collins, but I'm excited to see what he does with much better QB play and just a better overall offense around him to see if he can take that leap into that potential wide receiver 2 or 3 zone that we think is possible for him.
I'm afraid I might have already overexposed myself to Nico Collins, but that kind of is what it is at this point. I am such a big fan of CJ Stroud. I think you guys know that, though. So I'm just excited. I think he's going to shock some people.
Okay. I'm cautiously optimistic. Again, Nico Collins was averaging like 9 targets a game down the stretch last year. He had like 500 receiving yards in one of the worst passing offenses I've seen in like 10 games. I feel really good about Nico Collins. Another guy that I feel really good about, and I would have loved to talk about, Aidan, is Anthony Richardson in the Indianapolis Colts. I think it's good for our listeners to hear a different voice's perspective on Mr. Anthony Richardson. Aidan, tell us a little bit about the Indianapolis Colts in 2023 and how you're going to be approaching Anthony Richardson in redraft.
But we definitely know how you feel about Anthony Richardson, which is why I was like, I think I need to step in here and maybe give it a bit of a different perspective. I think people need to set reasonable expectations for Anthony Richardson.
Whoa, bro. People don't do that.
A lot of people aren't. Over the last 10 years, only 3 rookie QBs have finished in the top 10 of fantasy scoring. And I think people are expecting Anthony Richardson to be like pretty much Justin Fields last year in year 1, which is really, really optimistic. The 3 guys who did it, Justin Herbert, Deshaun Watson, and Dak Prescott, 3 really good quarterbacks. Not, Watson probably like the main rushing QB there. Obviously, Anthony Richardson has more rushing upside. He wasn't the most accurate passer in college. There's still a lot of work to be done with him. I think one of the biggest things going for him, though, which could help him be the 4th QB there, is Steichen and Steichen's offense. We saw the magic that he worked with Jalen Hurts last year and what he did for his development. And who's to say that he doesn't do that? Maybe not to that degree, obviously. Jalen Hurts was an MVP candidate. But who's to say that he doesn't have that similar effect and turn Anthony Richardson into a more polished passer, dual threat quarterback in the NFL. So, in my opinion, with Anthony Richardson, I'm very high on him personally. He's more of a dynasty and best ball guy for me. I think if you're in a redraft league and you're hitching your season to Anthony Richardson as your QB1, you're in for a wild ride. I think it's going to be a lot of highs, a lot of lows, but in my opinion, probably isn't going to yield the best outcome for you. So, that's where I stand on Anthony Richardson. A guy that I am very high on, though, on the Indianapolis Colts, that I am stoked on, that is going to return to fantasy glory, is Jonathan Taylor. Going back to Steichen and kind of what I expect Jonathan Taylor to be in this offense, Philadelphia ranked 4th in the NFL last year in rushing yards per game. So I think it's very clear what he's going to want to do with this offense, and Jonathan Taylor is at the forefront of that rushing attack. I think having Anthony Richardson in the backfield with him only helps too. Having that kind of dual threat will definitely keep defenses honest, and you can't just key in on Jonathan Taylor. He's fully healthy this year, sprained his ankle multiple times last year, so I don't think we saw the best version of Jonathan Taylor. That offense was absolutely abysmal too. They were 30th in points per game. And watching the Indianapolis Colts play football last year was really just like getting a root canal. It was painful. It sucked. No one was having fun. So I'm super high on Jonathan Taylor. He's my RB6 right in between Saquon and Josh Jacobs. I expect a huge bounce back season from him and firmly going to be in that running back 1 conversation again this year. Shaun, what do you think? I know I
liked it.
I didn't speak to A-Rich as the same tone, but what do we think?
I liked it because when I did that quarterback study, not a lot of 21-year-olds breaking out. It's
tough.
He's really young, man. He's really, really young. He's a young player.
But the tools are there.
Yeah.
The tools are there.
I think he could be a guy who comes on
for him?
strong at the end of the season. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if he's on the waiver wire like week 7, week 8. But then, like, he puts together a phenomenal back end of the season in fantasy where they figure out how to use him. He kind of learns as he goes. The receiving core is fine. I know a lot of people like to shit on this receiving core. I kind of like Pittman. I like Pierce. I like Downs. I like Jelani Woods. They have an interesting receiving core. So I don't think they're going to be great in fantasy because of the rushing upside of Richardson, but I think he has weapons around him to where it won't be as inept as that Florida offense was. But temper expectations is probably a good point. A team I can't temper my expectations for is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Keegan, you finally got a team I know you want to talk about here. Tell us a little bit about the Jaguars.
I got you, bro.
In 2023.
I got you, bro.
Gosh, in these previews, I keep getting stuck with these teams I fucking hate. But the Jaguars are a team that I do not hate. Let's start with the new man in town, Calvin Ridley. This is one of the most interesting conversations in fantasy football this year, I think, because Calvin Ridley, what we saw before he got suspended for gambling, he had some injury issues, some mental health stuff. It's been a long time since we've seen him play, but when we did see him play, we're talking about a guy that was outperforming, like, at the end of Julio Jones's peak, Calvin Ridley was there and was basically outperforming Julio Jones. And this is a very, very talented wide receiver that Trevor Lawrence is now going to get the opportunity to pass to. And where he ends up at the end of the season is really hard to predict. But I'll tell you one thing. He and Christian Kirk are going to be on the field all the time. They'll be the two wide receivers in the two wide receiver sets. They'll both be on the field in three wide receiver sets. Last year, according to Aidan Winks, the Jaguars were ranked fourth in wide receiver fantasy usage. I don't see that slowing down. One thing that Ridley has that Christian Kirk doesn't necessarily offer, I think Christian Kirk can do it and he's efficient, but Calvin Ridley is actually a spectacular downfield threat as a wide receiver. I thought Christian Kirk was really efficient last year in his role, but because of Calvin Ridley, he'll be able to slide more naturally into his secondary receiver role, which I think is where he's best fit on like kind of short to intermediate middle game. Like he can run out of the slot a lot. He actually got used 72% of the time in the slot, which is great coaching. I think he's always been an effective slot wide receiver, but that opens up a ton of opportunity for Calvin Ridley downfield and deep. And this is a quarterback who's not afraid to push it. I mean, Trevor is going to be more comfortable than ever in year 3 of his NFL career. He's got eyes that purvey downfield. This is not a hard stat, but like,
whoa.
Okay. This is not a hard.
That's crazy. You just.
But he's one of the few, especially few young quarterbacks that can actually keep his eye downfield. He'll go through all of his reads. He'll hang in the pocket when he needs to because he's looking for big plays. Because you know what? Elite. He trusts his arm. He is an elite quarterback talent. Right. And we've talked about this before on our podcast, but I do think Trevor Lawrence has potential to lead the league in passing this year. He has an outstanding wide receiver core. He's got a great tight end. He's got a good offense. The only thing that will hold Trevor Lawrence back in the Jaguars is I'd have to say their offensive line is like middle to below tier. It's not very good. It's not great, but Trevor is good. Like good enough already. And I can't believe I'm saying that. It's only his third year, but he's actually good enough where I don't know if I care. I actually don't know if I care.
He doesn't take sacks. He's good at getting out of the pocket. He's smart. He'll throw the ball away.
He's not so like athletic.
Joe Burrow,
he's just
Bengals bad like 2 years ago.
No. It's just like middle of the road,
great.
bottom.
Yeah, it's not great.
But like I said, with the downfield playability, his eyes that are always kind of looking for that big throw if he can make it. You know, he ranked 4th in PFF's big time throw rate last year, and I think Ridley has top 12 potential in fantasy. Wide receiver 1 should definitely be in his outcomes this year. And you know what? Christian Kirk might not be far behind. He's going to lose some volume, and the target comp gets steeper with Calvin Ridley in town. But like I said earlier, he gets to slide into his more natural role of wide receiver 2. And I think he's being priced pretty accordingly in his underdog drafts. What is he, like wide receiver 30? No, that's... I think Deontay Johnson.
He gets taken in like the 49th overall, I think is his ADP. And like he was a wide receiver of 14 last year. What is that, wide receiver 12? I wouldn't be shocked if he finishes at the same place and Calvin Ridley just soaks up some of Evan Ingram's work, some of most of Zay Jones' work, and like they just throw the ball more. I think they're gonna be in shootouts all year long. Their schedule is super difficult. So like I could see Kirk just having the same season he had last year.
They're almost basically valued at like the same spots in drafts where it's like wide receiver 18 for Calvin Ridley and wide receiver 20 for Christian Kirk. And that's like they might finish back to back just like that. But I think my fantasy outlook for them is heavy focus on the pass catchers. I don't have a lot of notes about ETN with the Bigsby thing. I think that conversation's kind of got played out in fantasy,
and we've talked
kind
about
of
it
run
so
that
much
to the ground
on this pod. Yeah,
I'm buying Trevor Lawrence this year, and I want some of Kirk and Ridley. That's going to be a fun offense.
Yeah, that passing game is going to be awesome. They should definitely yield 2 top 24 pass catchers if they pass as much as we think they are, and Trevor kind of picks up where he left off at the end of 2022.
An offense I don't really want to watch much of is the Tennessee Titans, even though they might get DeAndre Hopkins, have Traylon Burks, have Chickwankwo, have Derrick Henry. So maybe they are going to be more fun than I think. And they have a new offensive coordinator too. Last year, Todd Downing, like self-sabotage, brother. Like, were you betting against your team? Like, some of the plays that he called last year. Remember when he only threw the ball 3 times with Malik Willis? Like, what was that? Like, it was just absolutely insane. But when we're looking at the Tennessee Titans this season, I'm looking at Derrick Henry. And I think it's become kind of a meme at this point. Like, is this the year that Derrick Henry falls off of a cliff? And it's each year we proclaim that. He comes back and he finishes as a top 5 running back. But if you look at the study that Ryan Heath from Fantasy Points put out, he did an age curve analysis, and he found that year 7 running backs usually see a dip below their career baseline numbers. And then he says year 8 running backs production is decidedly not normally distributed, meaning that year 8 running backs are usually good or they're like terrible. Like they completely fall off a cliff. And it's the year 8 running backs that are good are usually like Hall of Famers, typically. And if you guessed it, Derrick Henry is in his 8th season in the NFL. And right now you can currently draft Derrick Henry at 25. His ADP is 25. Last season he finishes as the RB4. This guy has just been an absolute workhorse for close to 5 seasons now. Is probably one of the best players in all of fantasy. And this kind of looks like this is the last year he plays on the Titans. They did just draft a running back in the 3rd round in Tyjae Spears. But I firmly believe Mike Vrabel will ride Derrick Henry until the wheels fall off. But I'm just afraid that those wheels are coming off this season because he's logged so many carries since high school. And though it may seem like it's going to be this year, Henry is that special type of player. And Henry is that type of guy where if he comes out this season and he's good, he's probably going to make it into the Hall of Fame. I know running back's a little bit different historically because guys used to run more. Guys are running less now. I think Derrick Henry is going to be a Hall of Famer if he comes out and has a really good this year with the Tennessee Titans. So it's like, I'm comfortable grabbing shares of Derrick Henry as the start of the 3rd round at that like 25 ADP. I think I'm out on his risk profile if he starts to make his way up into like the early 2nd. And that's kind of how I'm approaching Henry. I'm open to anything happening, understanding the cliff could come, but I kind of think he's the best running back of his generation, and he's going to be a Hall of Famer, and he's going to just put his stamp on such a magical career this season. So have fun deciphering those range of outcomes because that's no fun, right? But I think that's kind of what you're going to get with Derrick Henry this year.
Will this year be the year that people finally respect Ryan Tannehill?
No.
If
Moving
sadly,
on to the AFC West. No, Ryan Tannehill's a good
name. He's a good quarterback. That's a good litmus test for like, do you know ball? It's like Dak
good.
Prescott. If you think Dak Prescott's bad,
on.
I don't think you know ball. But like,
Dak
if you tell
Prescott's
me
way
Ryan
better than
Tannehill's
Ryan
just,
Tannehill.
but that's the
I don't
point
think
I'm
he's
trying to
bad.
make. Like,
He's just so boring.
Blah,
He's
blah,
so
blah.
boring.
Whatever.
It's not fun. It's not fun football. Just Ryan Tannehill, play action, 15-yard dig route, first down.
Did you see that bomb he threw to Khalif Raymond and then that keeper he took in the end zone? It's like, yeah, it's great football, but I mean, like,
It's good football. He's a good football player.
I want to have fun. I want Derrick Henry stiff arming dudes into the shadow realm. Like I want to have fun watching football, dude.